Chapter 21. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Because of the previous fight, the town's deserted, a stark contrast to when Rod and his crew first landed. Rod, you want to take care of these two now? Bepo asked. Rod, holding the unconscious Gladius, stepped forward. Bepo had Menudo slung over his shoulder, also out cold. Rod shook his head, looking at a panting Law. You still need to work on your stamina, Law. This was just one fight. The monsters in the Grand Line can brawl for 10 days straight. Easy for you to say. I spammed my ability like crazy after the fight. Law retorted. After the battle, Law had immediately used his powers to treat Gray, followed by helping some civilians injured by Gladius's explosions. He looked completely drained. Yeah, you're right, Rod said absently, picking up a box and heading toward the shore. Before Law could argue further, Rod clapped him on the shoulder. Carry these two for now. I have a feeling our last experiment had something to do with luck. I'll do some calculations later and try again on an auspicious day. You can calculate that. Law and Bepo followed Rod towards the ship. Probably just pick it out with a blindfold on, Nello joked. Just tell me if you can figure it out. I need a lucky day if I'm gonna draw it. Law said. Lucky? You never win anything. Nello should do the drawing. Nah, Nello's a walking bad luck charm, Rod countered. Nello just smiled, but then his face suddenly went serious. Noticing the change, Rod and Law exchanged questioning glances. Ship approaching. Navy. Strong? Rod asked, knowing Nello's tendencies. If it was just a run-of-the-mill Navy patrol, Nello wouldn't react like this. There's a heavy hitter, plus 3 others who aren't pushovers. How long? 10 minutes. Get everything ready on the ship. I want to be able to sail at a moment's notice. Rod grinned. He was a little bummed he hadn't had a proper throwdown with Gladius, which would have been a great debut. Still, having a few Navy officers witness his departure wouldn't be half bad. They picked up the pace, heading for the polar tang. Meanwhile, on the approaching warship, they had a clear view of the island. The crew stared in disbelief at the town, practically leveled. From their vantage point, the town center was a scorched wasteland, a stark contrast to the surrounding streets. Major General Bastille tensed. According to the intel, the Don Quixote family's representative in the North Blue was Gladius, the blast fruit user. The guy had been wreaking havoc for years and had a 31 million bounty. After training in the New World, his strength would only have increased. No ordinary North Blue pirate could have taken him down. Could it be Germa 66? Bastille dismissed the thought almost immediately. If it were Germa 66, the whole town would be gone. The warship slowly approached the shore. As soon as it docked, Major Kallaw and Captain Basto led their troops ashore and rushed towards the town center. They'd already confirmed that numerous people were lying there. Judging by their rising and falling chests, they were still alive and in dire need of medical attention. Those guys are pretty brazen, Colonel Barrow muttered. His eyes scanned the ships in the harbor, spotting a few teenagers staring back. A flicker of annoyance crossed his face. As a Marine headquarters colonel and the head of a North Blue naval base for the past 2 years, even kingdom nobles treated him with respect. He wasn't used to such blatant stares. Hearing him, Colonel Drake glanced over. That's. Seeing the crew on the dark red sailboat, Drake stopped short, his pupils shrinking. Gladius. Where's the Don Quixote family member? Hina asked, turning her head. You've gotta be kidding. These kids did this. On the sailboat's deck was a huge fish tank, but instead of fish, it contained 2 headless torsos. The torsos were limp and waterlogged. Beside the tank were 2 bald heads. One looked different from his wanted poster, but the mask and glasses gave him away. Gladius, the explosive man. Hina's curious. Did you take him down? Lieutenant Commander Hina asked, stepping forward. What a weird way to talk, Rod muttered, surprised to see who was on the warship. He never expected so many acquaintances. Black Cage Hina, the barrier fruit user known for using black bars to trap people, and a popular figure in the Navy. Red Flag Drake, the Ryu no Mi model, Allosaurus user, a later supernova and a Navy mole, and the guy with the horned mask seemed to be a future vice admiral, whose name escaped him. Judging by his aura, he was the strongest of the bunch. The last one he didn't recognize, but he seemed decent enough. "You are pirates," Hina called out. She hopped onto the warship's railing, looking down at Rod and his crew. "While I'm not a fan of those guys, these seem to be just clueless teenagers," Colonel Barrow interjected. "They don't even have a flag. They're about to put one up, aren't they?" Hina said, tilting her chin. Barrow looked over and saw two boys on the mast, holding a black flag. Although the design was unclear, everyone knew that only pirates used black flags. "They're pirates," Barrow realized. Chapter 22 When the female Navy had her shoes taken off, new book, please read it. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Well, busted. Pekin and Xia Qi exchanged glances, a flicker of embarrassment crossing their faces. "You two stay put," as if releasing pent-up frustration, Lieutenant Colonel Hina, without waiting for Major General Bastu's orders, launched a direct attack after recognizing the pirate. Shave, with a burst of speed, she instantly appeared above the polar, reaching out to grab Pekin and Xia Qi. Thanks to her devil fruit ability, she could lock them in a black cage in a heartbeat. "Hands off my friends," as Hina moved, Rhodes leaped up, intercepting her path to Pekin and Xia Qi. The instant Lieutenant Colonel Hina appeared, he unleashed a sudden kick. Sensing the force of the approaching kick, Hina's expression shifted slightly. Twisting her waist, she altered her trajectory mid-air, narrowly dodging Rhodes's attack. Then, using the mast for leverage, she countered with a kick as their bodies passed. Damn, she's quick. Rhodes was surprised by Hina's reaction. He hadn't pegged Hina as physically skilled, and her overall combat abilities weren't particularly renowned. He was caught off guard by her performance in this fight. With this thought flashing through his mind, Rod contorted his body, swinging his arms to meet her attack, feeling Hina's kick graze his back. Swish. Their bodies separated. Rod stepped back, landing on the observation deck, while Hina stumbled back down. Looking at Hina's shoe in his hand, Rhodes looked sheepish. A moment later, his face changed, his gaze fixed on the shoe, a mix of surprise, excitement, and amusement flickering in his eyes. Hina landed on the polar's deck, 1 foot bare. A wave of mortification washed over her. Seeing her shoe clutched in Rhodes' hand and the strange look on his face, she became even angrier. "Hina's had it." Hina's hands began to glow with a faint black light, radiating a powerful killing intent. With a sudden sweep of her arms, 2 black barriers shot out, nearly demolishing the entire polar. Shave. Rhodes, who was on the observation deck above the mast, reacted instantly, vanishing in a blur and reappearing in front of Hina. He unleashed a fierce kick. Before she could fully extend her arms, Hina was struck by a massive force in her abdomen, sending her flying backward. She crashed heavily onto the port. Lieutenant Colonel Hina, though it took time to describe, Hina's rush to the polar and her subsequent kick to the port happened in roughly 10 seconds. Colonel Barrow was already fuming when he saw Rhodes holding Lieutenant Colonel Hina's shoe. Seeing his idol getting knocked around by the red-haired kid, he lost it. He grabbed the rifle from his back and fired 3 shots at Rhodes before tossing the empty gun and charging towards him. This guy's a decent shot, and he's using the Navy's new multi-shot rifle. Rhodes was taken aback by the barrage of bullets from the nameless Marine. Good thing I have backup. As Colonel Barrow fired, Nara drew his own black pistol and returned fire with 3 shots. To Colonel Barrow's astonishment, Nara's bullets perfectly intercepted each of his shots. That kind of accuracy. Barrow, initially confident in his marksmanship, was now in shock. He couldn't fathom anyone intercepting bullets mid-air. It demanded not only incredible precision but also instantaneous calculations of speed, angle, and environmental factors like wind and humidity. How could anyone do that? Observation hockey. Unlike Colonel Barrow, Major General Baschu understood immediately, but even basic observation hockey can't do this. Even at Navy HQ, there aren't many who could pull that off, There are people in the North Sea who can train their observation hockey to that extent. These guys are seriously dangerous, We have to keep them contained in the North Sea. If they make it to the Grand Line, who knows what chaos they'll cause, With that thought, Baschu abandoned observing the rest of the crew. He grabbed his sword and leapt from the warship. Seeing Baschu hurtling toward him, Rhodes grimaced. He drew the long sword at his waist and flashed in front of Baschu, clashing his blade against the massive sword. I thought I was imagining things, but I'm seeing it clear as day now. You used shave. As their swords met, Baschu was stunned to realize the opponent's strength was on par with his own. Even more shocking, the kid had been simply fast when he first fought Lieutenant Colonel Hina. But the way he appeared in front of her to deliver the second kick was clearly the Navy 6 styles technique, shave. He dismissed it at first, but now he was positive. The kid was using shave, and he was even better at it than before. When did you learn that? Even as he asked the question, Major General Baschu knew the answer. Are you talking about moving like that? I just picked it up. Rhodes pushed the Navy officer back toward the port, then landed on the deck, holding his sword in one hand and Hina's shoe in the other. Give me back Lieutenant Colonel Hina's shoe, you red-haired freak, Colonel Barrow roared, tensing his muscles and throwing a wild punch, *bang, Rhodes crossed his arms, blocking the blow, creating a burst of air, all that force and he can't even budge me, staring at Rhodes's young face so close to his own, Colonel Barrow was stunned. Without giving him time to react, Rhodes swung his long sword at Colonel Barrow. Blood sprayed. Colonel Barrow stumbled backward, leaning against the ship's railing, clutching his arms tightly, bowing slightly, as blood dripped. I got it, he looked up. Though injured, Colonel Barrow smiled victoriously. As Colonel Barrow stood upright, Rhodes saw Lieutenant Colonel Hina's shoe clutched tightly in his arms. Shouldn't he be holding the wound right now? As a swordsman, Rhodes knew the cut on the man's abdomen wasn't shallow, considering the amount of blood he was losing. All that just to get the shoe back. Are you some kind of pervert? Staring at the Navy guy clutching the woman's shoe with a crazed smile, Rhodes couldn't help but complain. You're the pervert. You're the one who stole Lieutenant Colonel Hina's shoe, right? Barrow became even more emotional after hearing Rhodes's complaint. Chapter 23, The Knight Does Not Die with Bare Hands, but with Unrighteous Hands, New Book, Please Re. You are listening at novelfull.audio. It was just an accident, Rhodes insisted, trying to salvage his reputation. Then why didn't you just toss them during the fight? You were still holding on to them. Just admit it, you're a pervert. Rhodes was speechless. After accidentally nabbing Hina's shoes, his golden ticket, Knights Will Not Die with Bare Hands, had kicked in, granting him instant mastery of one of the 6 styles. Shave was the technique of stomping the ground at lightning speed, like dozens of times in the blink of an eye, 0.36 seconds, using the explosive force to move at incredible speeds. The speed made it seem like you were vanishing right before your opponent's eyes. Rhodes had tried to replicate this move himself, but he always ran into snags. He couldn't control the direction, the distance, or the rhythm. Even when he could barely pull it off, it was useless in a real fight. He figured that if he could just see it in action and get some hands-on practice, he could master it quickly. He had the physicals for it. After all, turns out, his golden ticket had this hidden perk. By grabbing the shoes of someone who knew shave, he could master it. So, what about the other techniques? Could he learn moonwalk and tempest kick by grabbing someone's shoes too? Maybe Hina hadn't mastered those yet, which was why nothing happened earlier. Did iron body and paper art require him to strip someone naked? Where did that leave him with finger pistol? He wasn't about to chop off any fingers. Rhodes stared at his palm, speechless. Was this golden ticket for real? Still not admitting you're a pervert. You're just reliving the moment. Colonel Barrow roared, Convinced Rhodes was savoring the memory, this was about his goddess. Hey, come on, Rod, Luo said, giving him a weird look. He's an 18-year-old kid. Gotta expect a few urges, Naylu chimed in, playing along. Makes sense. Just hormones doing their thing, Luo added with a sly grin. But even if we're turning pirate, this is still pretty low-rent behavior. Seriously, if that's your thing, I'll give you my shoes. Just buy me a new pair, Nia offered, joining the fun. Alright, that's enough. Rhodes snapped, he was planning on testing, knights will not die with bare hands, again, but that would only fuel the rumors, bang, bang, bang. Suddenly, cannon fire erupted, and several shells slammed into the area around Rhodes and his crew, while some of the Navy troops jumped ship to engage in close combat. Drake, still on the warship, ordered his men to prepare for a full-scale bombardment. Seeing Rhodes' group tied up, he decided to blast them to bits. Colonel Barrow was on the other ship, but with his skills, he could survive the barrage. Besides, those guys had already shown they were too tough to beat with just the warship's firepower, but if they could destroy their ship, there would be no escape. Victory would belong to the Navy. Room, the slaughterhouse. A light blue aura washed over the scene as Luo activated his power. Cut. With a flick of ghost cry, he sliced every incoming cannonball in half. What kind of power is that? Drake stammered, watching from the ship, bewildered. He didn't see him make contact or attack, yet he casually split every cannonball. As Drake was distracted, Nero raised his black rifle and aimed at the enemy ship. First, 16 cannons. The black rifle barked, and the remaining 7 bullets flew. Before he was finished, Naylu had already swapped in a new magazine, following it with another 9 shots. Bang, bang, bang. The 16 cannons on the warship exploded almost simultaneously, obliterating the gun crews. And finally, the last officer on the ship. Nera's last bullet streaked toward Drake's forehead, catching him off guard after the explosions. Instinct took over. Drake instinctively activated his devil fruit power, his body swelling, his head morphing into a fearsome dragon. The bullet, aimed at his brow, struck his chest, only piercing his skin. An ancient Zoan devil fruit user. Naylu exclaimed, his expression hardening. Luo, get us ashore. I don't want my precious polar getting damaged. Neru and I are enough. The light blue aura spread again, encompassing the warship and the port. Leave the female marine to me. I bet our captain would be too soft and drag things out. He's not exactly known for his gentle touch with women, Luo responded dryly, recalling Rhodes' kick. However, remembering Rhodes' weird behavior earlier, Luo included Nia in the teleportation, instantly moving her and the 2 marines from the shore. This is my first fight with the Navy. Hopefully, I'm stronger than that skinny dog back then. Nia cracked her knuckles, her eyes on Lieutenant Commander Hina with a glint of excitement. Just a reminder, you took down a Navy major back in Glass Town, Nera reminded her, watching Drake transform into his beast form. Did I? I forgot. You're assigning an opponent to Hina without permission? Hina is furious. Her gaze bypassed the cat-like woman and landed on Rhodes, who stood a little further away. Hina's eyes didn't hide her anger. In that case, Hina will take you all into custody first. In a blink, she was at Nia's side, a fist flashing toward her face. Nia leaned back, avoiding the strike, then pressed her hands to the ground and flipped into the air, swinging her legs to slam hard into Hina's shoulders. Underestimate me, and you'll regret it. I won't hold back just because the captain likes you. Hina wiped the blood from the corner of her mouth, ignoring the jab, and focused on the cat-like woman. Hina won't let her guard down again. Chapter 24, Complete Victory, New Book, please read. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Looks like you two aren't exactly buddies. Still in his hybrid form, Drake unbuckled his sword and axe, hefting one in each hand. He eyed Naylu, who shared his red hair, and said slowly, sending a gun guy like you to babysit me. Before he finished, Drake lunged. Despite his hulking size and hybrid form, Drake was lightning fast. He closed the distance in an instant, swinging his sword and axe simultaneously, clang. Nelu blocked the blow with the thick butt of his black gun. A smirk crept across his face as he saw Drake's surprise. I might be a gun guy, but that doesn't mean I can't handle myself up close. Before the words were out of his mouth, Nelu kicked, connecting with Drake's solid body. The kick gave him the space he needed to reload midair. Before Drake could react, Nelu's gun barked, bang bang bang. Drake's pupils shrank as Nelu raised the gun. He tried to dodge, but a bullet tore through the thick hide of his beast form, piercing his chest. Another bullet hit the same wound, burrowing deeper. The third followed the same path, then exploded inside him. Cough, Drake collapsed, dropping out of his hybrid form, spitting blood. Armor-piercing, penetrating, and explosive rounds. You're done. Nelu took a deep breath, watching Drake struggle. Must be that observation hockey. Drake glared at Nelu, a mix of rage and defeat in his eyes. This feeling, of having all his power turned against him in an instant, sucked. Nelu had anticipated everything he was going to do, down to his dodges. 3 bullets, 3 different effects, all landing in the same spot. Nelu must have mastered observation hockey to an insane degree to pull that off. I've got a little talent for observation hockey, yeah. Nelu, having secured his victory, didn't mind a little banter. The fight had only lasted seconds, but it had taken its toll. Pushing his observation hockey to its limit like that had drained him. It would take a while to recover. How come someone like you is a nobody out on the sea? Maybe because we just hit adulthood and haven't had time to make a name for ourselves yet. Just hit adulthood. Drake felt his injuries worsen just hearing that. Nelu settled into a cross-legged position a dozen yards away, black gun ready. Now, just sit tight and watch the show. Clang. Rhodes' longsword met Bastu's buzzsaw. He vanished, reappearing 30 feet away. Before Bastu could adjust, he was back, sword swinging, too fast. Colonel Barrow gripped his spear, eyes darting around the battlefield, unable to find an opening. From the start, that red-haired brat had been a blur, slashing at Major General Bastu. He hadn't landed any real blows, but Bastu seemed unable to touch him either, and as for him, Barrow couldn't even track the kid, only catching glimpses during the clashes. Not enough time to aim, damn kid. Unlike Barrow, Bastu could keep up. After a few exchanges, he knew Rhodes' game. Each shave burst covered the same distance, but from different angles. The kid was just showing off his shave skill. Well then, blocking another strike, a red glint flashed in Bastu's eyes as invisible force coated his buzzsaw. Clang, their weapons met again, and Bastu's saw sheared through Rhodes' sword. While Rhodes was reeling from the loss of his weapon, Bastu pressed the attack. The massive saw roared forward, the blade bigger than Rhodes himself. Just before impact, Rhodes leaned back, dodging the fatal blow. Too bad. Colonel Barrow couldn't help but blurt out, the red-haired brat had lost his weapon. He was done. Bastu thought the same. He'd sensed the attack with his fledgling observation hockey and used his rudimentary armament hockey to break the sword. A swordsman without a sword was finished. He lunged, launching his first real attack after dozens of defensive maneuvers. This was the end. Too bad. As if reading his mind, Rhodes grinned, a faint red glow in his eyes. He stepped back, letting the saw blade swing past him, burying itself in the ground. Rhodes grabbed the saw blade with his left hand, pinning it, and locked eyes with Bastu. I'm not just a swordsman. He dug in his heels, cracking the stones beneath. He launched himself forward, appearing in front of Bastu in a heartbeat. He swung his right fist, a terrifying force behind it, and smashed it into Bastu's mask. Bang! The mask shattered, and Bastu flew backward, crashing through dozens of buildings before landing in the ruins of the Don Quixote stronghold at the town center. But I think I'll keep the saw as a trophy. Major General Bastu. Colonel Barrow stared in horror. The Major General had been taken out. What chance did he stand? We won. Nia's cheer rang out just as Rhodes finished his fight. The pink-haired Marine opposite her was tough, even managing to trap one of her legs. But the black barrier on Nia's leg had boosted her attack power. allowing her to knock out her opponent with one blow. Chapter 25 Pirate Flag, New Book, please read. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Rod, more warships are inbound. The fighting was over at both locations, and Nera chimed in to remind them. He sensed multiple warships heading their way. Then let's bounce. Rod, clutching a saw blade taller than himself, glanced at Barrow, who never got a chance to attack. After such a wild battle, he wasn't interested in dealing with guys at this level. Those two from the Navy. Nera nodded toward them. Drake, who Rod defeated, and Hina, who Nia took down, were both devil fruit users. If they were lucky, they might snag 2 devil fruits. Nah, forget it. They're the ones who actually believe in justice in the Navy. I don't hate them. Besides, they're promising young officers. If we off them, the Navy bigwigs will be all over us. You're the captain, your call. Nera nodded, surveying the Navy troops. While they were duking it out, the sailors had lined up at the docks. Even the ones who'd entered the town had returned, surrounding them nervously but hesitant to make a move. Rod grinned at the jumpy sailors, then the 3 of them turned and headed back to the Polar. Haha, I was actually gonna ask you to spare that pretty Navy girl. Even though she's an enemy, I respect her a lot. Nia said, laughing, as she followed Rod. Hey, I'm not a monster. I respect those with a real sense of justice. Colonel Barrow gripped his weapon, his face a mask of conflict, as he watched the 3 casually stroll back to their pirate ship. Lieutenant Commander Hina was unconscious after her defeat. Colonel Drake was seriously injured and unable to stand. Even Rear Admiral Bastille was knocked out with a single punch. Only Barrow, with minor injuries, remained to lead the remaining soldiers, but what could he do alone? All soldiers! Barrow yelled, gripping his weapon. The sailors turned to face him as Rod and his crew casually made their way back to the ship, Rod even carrying Bastille's signature weapon over his shoulder. Seeing the complicated looks on the sailors' faces, Barrow dropped his weapon to the ground. Do your best to treat the wounded. The sailors sighed in relief, but then a wave of shame washed over them. They had retreated in the face of pirates. Jumping onto the ship, Rod smiled at the pirate flag raised by Bippo, Pekin, and Shiachi. Unlike typical pirate flags, Rod's didn't have a skull and crossbones. Instead, it had Nera's gun and Law's sword crossed, topped with a giant fist representing Rod's ambition to rule the world with his fists. Companions. Set sail. Yeah. The crew answered loudly, raising the sails with the Rhodes Pirates logo. Hey, join in. The vibe's not strong enough. TSK, don't be so demanding. We all have work to do. Rod lounged on the deck. He had just checked on Gray and given him the antidote. He should be fine soon. Oh. So, where to next, Captain? Nera said casually, holding the helm and a map. Oh. Let's hit the Grand Line. Nia cheered, raising her hands. Delicious food, beautiful sights, unique cultures, adventure awaited. That's right. Rod high-fived Nia. Pekin and Shiachi, after securing the sail, ran over, excited. I heard there's Fishman Island in the Grand Line. I wanna see the Mermaid Princess. I wanna go to Amazon Lily. I wanna see the world's most beautiful woman, the Pirate Empress. Hee, maybe a mother bear. Bippo blushed, her eyes filled with longing. Too soon. So shallow. Nia sneered, turning to Rod. What about you, Captain? The Mermaid Princess is cute, but too young, practically a kid. The Pirate Empress is too stuck up, I don't like her. You've actually seen them, Boss Rhodes? Nope. So it's true. Turns out all guys are the same. I was wrong about you, Rhodes. You change names fast. Totally. While you were fighting, I raided the Navy ships and put the stuff with the Don Quixote loot in the first floor lobby. You might be interested. Law, napping on the deck, spoke up suddenly. Yes. Our spoils. Everyone shouted at once, then exchanged excited glances. That's it? This is from a warlord of the sea. Nia was disappointed after counting the treasures from the Don Quixote family, excluding the food, there were only about 70 million berries in cash. Even with the jewelry, it was only around 110 million. This is just a base in the North Blue. The treasures are sent back to the New World regularly. This is still pretty good. Neru, adjusting the ship's course, chimed in after hearing Nia's complaints. Law, you totally betrayed the family. Gladius, who woke up, said suddenly, he was soaked and weak. Only his head, severed by Law, sat on a wooden box. Everyone was so caught up in opening the treasure that they hadn't noticed he was awake. What nonsense are you talking about? Isn't it obvious? Law glanced at Gladius. The joy of opening the box faded, but he smiled again, though it looked sinister to Gladius. We still have the biggest prize to open. Hearing Law, everyone turned to Gladius, grinning creepily. Beepo thoughtfully placed a box of fruit next to him, thanks to book friend 20200726175016160 for the monthly ticket. Chapter 26 Explosive Fruit. Successfully obtained, new book, please read it. You are listening at novelfull.audio. This guy needs a backup plan. If we don't deal with this ASAP, Doflamingo will be all over us. Neru's words snapped Rhodes to attention. Rhodes had wanted to find the perfect day to snag the devil fruit, but the risk of Doflamingo, one of the 7 warlords, hounding them because of the paper of life meant killing him now was the smarter move. He'd almost forgotten that, Dressrosa, Doflamingo's base, is in the second half of the Grand Line, right between the North and West Seas. He could cut through the calm belt and be in the North Sea in no time, plus, Doflamingo's string fruit lets him zip around on clouds. He could chase them right through the calm belt. Rhodes wasn't sure he could take Doflamingo on right now. Good thing I've got you, Neru. Rhodes clapped him on the shoulder, relieved. But first, let's off this scrawny mutt and use him as a test run. A test run? The others looked confused. Yeah, well, I might not be able to pick the most auspicious day, but at least I'm knocking off the small fry first. It's all about the ritual. Whatever you say, but I'm on board. Luo, mostly recovered from his nap, held out his palm, a soft blue light flickering. Room, isolation chamber, a blue halo expanded, engulfing the 2 captives and the nearby fruit. Sounds legit, Rhodes said, drawing on his past experiences with Luo. This felt stronger than the time he'd taken down Bellamy. Totally. That area's practically in another dimension, Neru confirmed. His unique background gave him extra insight. What are you? Gladius, a Doflamingo family executive, knew enough to be dangerous. When a devil fruit user dies, their power is reborn randomly in a fruit somewhere. The exact mechanics are a mystery, but folks have seen ordinary fruit suddenly transform into devil fruits, what these guys were planning. Looks like you're clued in. No time for chit-chat. Luo focused on the room. With a flick of his fingers, a dagger from a nearby water tank moved and pierced Menudo's heart. 3 minutes ticked by. Guess it didn't work this time. Luo released his ability, looking drained. Maintaining the domain took a lot out of him. Even though he'd been training with Rhodes since childhood and was way stronger than before, he was still pushing his limits to keep the isolation chamber going for that long. Heard devil fruits have a will of their own, choosing a worthy host. Guess none of us made the cut, huh? Rhodes wasn't bummed about the failed experiment. It was just an idea. If it worked, great. If not, no harm done. Don't stop now. The stage is set, let's strike while the iron's hot. Rhodes turned to Gladius and urged Luo on. I can only manage half a minute, tops. Luo looked worried. Rhodes seemed nonchalant, but Luo wanted to pull this off. As a user and researcher, he knew Rhodes' idea had potential. The problem was his own fruit abilities weren't developed enough. No wonder the mutt fruit didn't stick. It probably knew you already had powers. Otherwise, you and the mutt fruit would have been a match made in heaven. Rhodes ribbed Luo relentlessly, then waved off any protests. Forget it, half a minute should do. It's all about luck. Could work in 10 seconds, could take half an hour. I'm betting on luck. Hearing Rhodes' encouragement, Luo didn't hesitate. He activated his power again, trapping Gladius and the fruit. The young master won't let you get away with this. Gladius said, resigned to his fate. He glared at Luo, his voice cold. And I won't let him get away with anything. Luo replied calmly, with another flick of Luo's fingers, the knife plunged into Gladius' heart. His head slumped against the wooden box, his eyes lifeless. The instant Gladius died, an apple near him morphed into a devil fruit with bizarre swirls. The human fruit, model, blast. Yes. Everyone cheered, like they'd achieved something amazing. No one had ever heard of anyone stealing a devil fruit's power like this before. Finally, Luo felt a wave of relief. Rhodes was right, it only took a second for the new fruit to appear. One successful test case, and he could finally relax. The pressure of carrying everyone's hopes without delivering was intense. How much pressure was Rhodes under, carrying everyone's dreams and leading the way? As everyone celebrated, Luo caught a glimpse of the captain's responsibilities. Why are you so wiped out? That only took 10 seconds. Rhodes clapped Luo on the shoulder, snapping him out of his thoughts. So, what do we do with this thing? His thoughts interrupted. Luo passed the buck. Pekan, Xiachi, either of you want it? Us? Pekan and Xiachi exchanged surprised glances. That's a devil fruit worth, like, 100 million berries. Boss, you're just handing it to us. Their cheers had been partly excitement at seeing the fruit reborn, partly for the crew. Neither of them had ever thought they'd be offered a devil fruit. Of course. You're my crew. Boss. They both hugged Rhodes, overcome with emotion. Knock it off, there's only one. Who gets first dibs? But boss, you don't even have a devil fruit yourself. Pekan hesitated. I'm not planning on eating one anytime soon, and neither is Neru. We've still got to tap into our existing potential. We'll pass for now. Xiachi nodded at Pekan and turned to Rhodes, putting on her most flattering smile. Then, they both grabbed Rhodes' legs, hugging them tight. Since you asked who wanted one first, that means we're getting another shot later. Next time there's a fruit, we're getting powers together. Your words bond, Boss Rhodes. Relax, I promise you'll get a choice. Just get off me, you big lugs are disgusting. Chapter 27 Monsters of the Rod Pirates, new book, please read. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Major General Baschu, I'm sorry, I couldn't stop him. A group of defeated Rhodes pirates generals were huddled together. Everyone but Colonel Barrow, who only had minor injuries, was sprawled out on the gravel and wooden crates, not caring how they looked. What are you talking about? I got my butt kicked. He even took my shark-slaying sword, and I've had that thing for years. Baschu had his head wrapped in layers of gauze. After the Rhodes pirates took off, some Navy guys found him in the rubble and patched him up. Pirates are tough, and Baschu didn't get to be a rear admiral by being a pushover. Sure, Rhodes decked him with one punch, but thanks to quick medical attention, he's bouncing back and can move around okay. That crew is no ordinary band of pirates. I have a feeling they're going to make some serious waves. In all his years with the Navy, Baschu had never seen pirates like these guys. The kid was a nobody, but he went right after a warlord of the sea and held his own. Any intel on them yet? We pieced together what we could from the Don Quixote survivors and other witnesses in town. Barrow flipped through the report he was holding. The red-haired kid's the captain. Name's Rhodes. He doesn't seem to be a devil fruit user. Baschu looked at the photo of Rhodes that Barrow showed him and felt a throbbing in his head. Some genius got the angle just right. It caught the exact moment Rhodes knocked him flat. You can even see the back of his head. That kid's scary. He picked up Shave just by watching it and used it dozens of times in their fight. His learning ability and physical skills are off the charts. He's a monster. And that's not even mentioning the fact that this monster can take down a Navy headquarters rear admiral with a single punch. The long-haired guy's called Nalu. He might be related to Rhodes. They both have red hair and blue eyes. His spearmanship is insane. Barrow considers himself a pretty good marksman, but he's not even in the same league. Looking at Nalu in the photo, holding a black gun and aiming, Derek felt a twinge in his chest. Zoan devil fruit users heal fast, especially the ancient Zoan types, but Nalu's damage was internal, which is why he's taking so long to recover. He still feels the pain when he breathes. His observation hockey is off the charts. Bastiu added, his own skills were nothing compared to Nalu's. According to Colonel Drake, the guy's observation hockey was incredibly advanced, which makes no sense. Hockey comes from willpower. How did a rookie, who's probably never even been to sea before, develop such strong hockey? Barrow moved on from Nalu and kept flipping through the report. The guy with the spotted hat is Trafalgar Law. Witnesses say he might be connected to the Don Quixote family. What's interesting is that he single-handedly took out Gladius, the Don Quixote family leader and explosive fruit user. Plus, he's a devil fruit user. Based on what we know, he can teleport anything within his range. He did it all himself. Bastiu was stunned, his head throbbing again. Why can't any of these guys be normal? Where did all these freaks come from in the North Blue? And I've heard of this one before, Catwoman Mia. The photo was clearly a candid shot. At least the background wasn't Hina, but Menudo, a Don Quixote family underling. She's a Zoan devil fruit user, a cat fruit, model, black cat. She's been a pirate hunter and mercenary for a while. Not sure when she joined this crew. Hina touched her shoulder, looking annoyed. She and Nia were probably around the same age, maybe younger. She lost a one-on-one fight. There was also a polar bear and 2 sailors on board, but they weren't in the photos. Barrow closed the report and looked at Bastiu. This is a headache. I need you to get this info to headquarters ASAP. Tell them to keep an eye on these guys and get a bounty on their heads ASAP. Got it. New World, Dressrosa. King's Plateau. A tall guy in a pink shirt was lounging in a beach chair, listening to the laughter from the pool nearby, with a wicked grin on his face. That's Don Quixote Doflamingo, the king of Dressrosa, a warlord of the sea, and an underworld broker. Nah, Doffy, guess what news I just got? A scruffy, unshaven uncle leaned in close to Doflamingo and whispered in his ear. You're too close, Treble. Doflamingo sat up and looked at one of his top executives. It must be pretty big for you to tell me in person. Behihi. With his nose dripping, Treble leaned in even closer to Doflamingo. It's news from Gladius. Gladius? He should be in the North Blue right now. Yep, that's the only place something like this could happen. Treble grinned. He found Law and said he'd beat him half to death and drag him back here. Law. Hearing the name, Doflamingo's expression changed slightly, then he grinned wider than ever. Heh. It's been a while since I heard that name, Law. Behihi. Treble laughed along with Doflamingo. Young master, something terrible has happened. A maid came running over, holding a torn piece of paper. Behind her was a big guy in a yellow jacket. They both looked terrified, and Baby 5 even had tears in her eyes. Baby 5, Buffalo, what's going on? Doflamingo's smile disappeared when he saw their frightened faces. Did some idiot take advantage of Baby 5 again? Life paper. Baby 5 ran closer, holding out the torn piece of paper to Doflamingo, her voice trembling. Gladius's life paper is burning. Chapter 28. Doflamingo in action, new book, please read it. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Looking at the burning life paper, Doflamingo's face went ice cold. Life paper reflects its owner's vitality. It shrinks when they're weak and returns to its original size when they recover. This life paper was burning, meaning its owner was rapidly fading. Once it burns completely, the owner's life is over. Baby 5 held the life paper, and it was slowly burning. The owner? Gladius, the guy Doflamingo and Treble had just been talking about. As they spoke, the life paper in Baby Five's hand turned to ash, dissipating into nothing, the laughter from the swimming pool vanished, and a terrifying atmosphere settled over King's Highland. A wave of intense pressure radiated from Doflamingo, making everyone uneasy. Ba-a-a-a-a. Doflamingo's roar erupted, veins bulging on his forehead, a clear sign of his fury. Did you do this, Law? Law. Hearing her childhood friend's name from Doflamingo, Baby Five felt a flicker of curiosity, but this wasn't the time for that. The sight of Doflamingo so enraged made her tremble. It had been a long time since she'd seen him this mad. Get ready. We're heading to the North Blue. Doflamingo sat back down after giving Baby Five and Buffalo their orders. He couldn't leave the New World operation without key personnel, so he could only take Baby Five and Buffalo, meanwhile, on the Polar Tang. Chow time. Chef Pekin's got a real feast for you today. In the dining area on the first floor, Pekin started laying out dishes. First up, braised fish belly, then steamed sea bass, pan-fried fish fillets, fragrant fish head soup, secret recipe grilled fish, special smoked fish. Gimme 3 bowls of rice, and a side of those pickled veggies from the Navy ship. Any rice balls? I'll just take 1. Hopefully there's some canned stuff. Beepo wants something different, too. How far to the next island? We need to find a real chef, ASAP. Don't be picky. Just cook whatever. Pekin snapped, losing it. They'd been at sea for 2 days since leaving Spedimiles. With no professional chefs, he'd been stuck doing the cooking, but all he knew how to make was fish. He wasn't bad at it, but even Beepo, who loved fish more than anyone, was starting to get sick of it. Rod felt like he was turning into a freaking fish. Fine, I'll make something else. With a sigh, Rod went into the kitchen and grabbed some utensils. 2 bad nights don't die with bare hands didn't work on kitchen equipment. Otherwise, he could actually be a chef. Half an hour later. Golden fried rice and big pot stew, dig in. He set a huge pot of fried rice on the table, followed by a large pot of stew, then dumped in a can of some secret seasoning they'd snatched from the Don Quixote family, stirred it up real good, and bam. Dinner was served. This is surprisingly good. Nera nodded after trying it. Finally, something different. Law grabbed a big bowl of rice and started shoveling it in. Seriously, you guys have lived together since you were kids. Did you seriously eat fish every day all those years? Nia, finally getting a change of pace, couldn't help but ask. 8 wolves cooking. My job provides food. I salute you. Nia facepalmed, speechless. You're not exactly qualified to judge. Rod shot Nia a look. At least he could whip up fried rice and iron pot stew. She could barely boil an egg. So, you ate fish every day because you only know how to cook fish. Gray suddenly clapped his hands. Law had finally patched him up this morning and gotten all the toxins out of his system. This was his first meal with them at the table in days. He'd been getting room service before. Who do you think wants to eat fish 3 times a day? It's a shame we grabbed so much food, but nobody can cook it. Then I'll just build an automatic food processor later. Gray said, casually stirring the stew. Automatic food processor. Everyone froze and stared at Gray, who was still stirring. What's wrong? Looking up at everyone staring, Gray looked confused. Oh, I get it. You guys like to do it the old-fashioned way, right? Some people like cooking by hand, and think machine-made food is soulless, but I don't see any difference. I'm a scientist, after all. I spend all my time on research. Since I'm on my own, I gotta use machines to cook. The one I built before could only make 80 different dishes, though. After eating that for a few years, I got really tired of it and never got around to upgrading it. Automatic cooking machine. 80 different kinds of food. Filtering out Gray's rambling, Rod homed in on the key points. Stop eating. We're doing this now. Rod grabbed Gray, who was still picking at his food, and dragged him toward the lab downstairs. Wait, I'm not done eating. 1 hour later, This asterisk is an automatic food processor. Looking at the simple machine that looked like a microwave, Rod looked doubtful. So did everyone else. This is the ordering terminal. I made some modifications to the polar tang. This is directly connected to the warehouse. The larger production components are in the warehouse. Just select what you want on the terminal. Oblivious to everyone's skepticism, Gray stepped up to demonstrate and selected a thick-cut steak. Then, just wait a minute or less, and your food will be ready. As he finished speaking, a steak popped out in front of them. Rod's eyes widened at the unscientific spectacle. He was at a loss. What kind of black magic was this? Whoa! This is great. Nia took a bite. The steak was cooked perfectly, and the rich flavor exploded on her tongue. Awesome! Gray, I'm seriously impressed. Pecan ran up and chose pork chop rice. A steaming plate appeared in seconds. Delicious. I want a rice ball. You got rice balls? Beepo wants barbecue. Grilled chicken wings. Fried chicken and fries. And a Coke. Forget it. I'm not a scientist. I don't care if it's scientific. Rod took a bite of the fried chicken. The crispy outside gave way to tender chicken. The juices and spices burst out, harmonizing perfectly. Smells amazing. Chapter 29, Bounty, New Book, Please read. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Alright. After ordering every single one of the 80 dishes and polishing them off, the crew, who'd been drowning in fish for days, felt like they'd been given a new lease on life. The automatic food processor was cranking out stuff way better than they could ever hope to make themselves. So, where are we exactly? With the table cleared, they gathered around, bellies full, to talk navigation. Nehru, ever the navigator, spread out a map of the North Sea. We left from Speed a miles here, and we're roughly around here. He circled a spot, the best he could do without any landmarks. Our ultimate goal is the Grand Line. To get there from the 4 seas, we gotta pass through Reverse Mountain, which is here. At our current speed, it'll take about 10 days to reach it. Problem is, Nehru continued, even though we stocked up at Speed a miles, at the rate we're eating, we've only got about 20 days worth of supplies left, max. That fast? It should have lasted 30, according to my calculations. Nehru glanced at the food processor. But Gray's dream machine is gonna make things worse. We might not even make it to 20 days at this rate. Ahahaha. Can't help it, the food's too good. Everyone laughed, the room bubbling with happiness. So, our original plan of just blasting straight into the Grand Line is shot. We need to resupply before hitting the Grand Line. It's the most dangerous stretch of ocean in the world. We gotta be prepared for anything. Should we head to Hulgus town for supplies? It's the closest town to the Grand Line. It would guarantee maximum supplies before we enter the Grand Line. Rhodes stood up, shaking his head. No way. The Navy and the warlords have already thought of that. They're probably setting a trap, waiting for us. He pointed at the map. We're going here. Tiger Shark Island. Nia breathed. That's a total no man's land. Tiger Shark Island was notorious throughout the North Sea. No Navy branch, no country, no force controlled it. The only law was the twisted code of the underworld. Exactly. That's why the Navy and the warlords would never expect us to go there. Yeah, it'll add a day to our trip to Reverse Mountain, but it's worth it. We grab what we need and get out quick. Then straight to the Grand Line. I'll reinforce the storage room to make sure the food lasts longer. Suddenly, Pecan burst in, practically vibrating with excitement. He'd volunteered as lookout after the feast. Bounties! He yelled. We've got bounties. Whoa! Everyone crowded around as Pecan slapped the newspaper and the wanted posters on the table. Even the usually aloof Luo leaned in. First up, Boss Rhodes, Mad Blade Rhodes, 71 million berries. Nice. That's a serious first bounty. He's gotta be a top dog in the North Sea with that kind of price on his head. The poster showed Rhodes carrying his Bastus, sword. At a little over 6.5 feet and a giant saw blade of over 13 feet, he really did look intimidating. The photo Colonel Barrow had taken had been scrapped, likely out of respect for Vice Admiral Bastu. Wait a minute. Rhodes bristled. Who came up with that nickname? It's so lame. Mad Blade Rhodes sounded like a third-rate villain. Black Gun Nero, 44 million berries. That sounds about right. And who took that photo? Why am I so handsome? Nero's poster showed him aiming his black gun, his sharp green eyes a stark contrast to his pretty boy face. Death Surgeon Luo, 42 million berries. Luo's poster was a standard headshot. Catwoman Nia, 28 million berries. That's a great photo. Nia said, approving of her heroic pose. That's it. Pekin suddenly deflated. I'm not on any of these, they didn't even mention me. Wah, do I not even qualify for a bounty? Xia Qi hugged Pekin, and they both started crying. Bear isn't either. Bepo was about to join them when he spotted a poster hidden under the newspaper. It was his photo. Bear is wanted too. He squealed, grabbing his own poster and showing it to Pekin and Xia Qi. Look, it's Bear's bounty. Xia Qi looked up and saw Bepo posing in a ridiculous white crane spreading wings stance. She started sobbing again. Why does Bepo get one and I don't? Wait. After a moment, Xia Qi looked at Bepo's bounty again. 200 berries. What? Bepo snatched his poster, examined it, and his face fell. Why does Bear only have 200 berries? Ha ha ha, Bepo, your bounty isn't even enough to pay for the ink. Sorry. Bepo apologized automatically, then burst into tears again. Woo-woo. Bear fought bravely, too. Chapter 30 Strength, New Book, please read. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Even though we steered clear of Hulgus town to avoid the Navy, that doesn't guarantee we've shaken them off our tail. The Navy rarely sets bounties this high right out of the gate. A price like this means they're taking our crew seriously. While that's something to be proud of, it also means they'll be hunting us with everything they've got. Next time, it might be a team led by a vice admiral from headquarters, and it's not just the Navy we have to worry about. There are bounty hunters lurking in the shadows and pirates with their own agendas. After all, our combined bounty is nearly 200 million berries, a payday you won't find anywhere else in the North Sea. The reward for taking us down, or even just the reputation they'd gain, will bring all sorts of people out of the woodwork. Rod looked at his crewmates and said, dead serious, we aren't dumb. We all know what's coming. Luo stood up, clutching his sword. When he got serious, he actually looked like a captain. That thought flashed through his mind as Luo headed straight to his room. It was next to the galley, a large room connected to the medical bay. He sometimes needed to study certain things, so to save time, Luo had requested the connection when the Polar was being built. He had some new ideas he wanted to try out. The fight with Gladius was manageable. It didn't push him too hard, however. Rod's suggestion to intercept devil fruit powers and create a completely isolated space using his own powers, especially after one successful attempt, sparked some new insights in Luo. Developing this ability could increase the success rate of acquiring devil fruits, boost the crew's future potential, and become an effective combat tactic. Fighting's not really my thing. I'm going to tinker around in the workshop. Gray got up quietly and headed to the research lab below. Let's go work out. Pei-Jin and Xia Qi were still bursting with energy. They felt like they were the weakest links on the ship, and unlike Gray, they didn't have any special skills, so they never slacked off. They trained every day, sometimes even jumping into the ocean to swim. Especially after getting the explosion fruit, they seized every chance to swim, cherishing their last chances to be in the water before becoming devil fruit users. Seeing everyone so motivated, Rhodes smiled with relief. Then he got up and went to his own room. As captain, his quarters were in the middle of the second deck, with a small balcony outside and the Polaris's helm. When he opened the door, the first thing he saw was the huge saw blade, Shark Cutter, hanging on the wall, a trophy from his victory over Bastion. Rod reached out and grabbed Shark Cutter. His ability, Knights Don't Die Barehanded, automatically kicked in, instantly granting him mastery of the saw blade's techniques. Unlike a standard katana or longsword, this weapon was designed for heavy chopping and demanded serious strength from the user. What made it even more significant was that Bastion was a swordsman who had mastered slashing iron. Closing his eyes, Rod tapped into the swordsman's skill, radiating a sharp aura. After a while, Rod set down Shark Cutter and picked up a long sword he'd taken from the captured items. A feeling of understanding washed over him. He knew he could now cut through steel with this ordinary blade. He was now a swordsman. Even though his swordsmanship was only at the beginner level, Rod's raw physical power made his strikes far stronger than those of a typical swordsman, and that wasn't all. Rod focused, and an invisible force surged from within him, flowed through his hand, and enveloped the long sword. Armament Hockey. This so-called armament hockey, similar to observation hockey, was a power of will that enhanced defense and attack. Besides being a swordsman, Bastion also had a basic understanding of the two-color hockey. Even though he wasn't a master, it was enough for Rod to unlock his own armament hockey. Because he'd been in the North Sea, he hadn't encountered strong enough opponents. Even knowing the principles of the two-color hockey, Rod had only mastered observation hockey with Neru's help, not armament hockey. Major General Bastion, you're a lifesaver. Rod dropped the long sword, letting the hockey flow through his body. Fueled by his impressive physique, the hockey surged out, covering his entire body in an instant. Entanglement and hardening. Flowing outward. Internal destruction. These were some armament hockey techniques Rod knew. Thanks to the insights he'd gained from Shark Cutter, Rod had not only awakened armament hockey but also quickly mastered the entanglement and hardening technique. And with his powerful physique, the strength of his hockey, even in this early stage, already surpassed Bastion's. He could probably go toe-to-toe with the 7 warlords of the sea now. Rod silently assessed his strength. Most people in the pirate world aren't that strong physically, but he had been training since childhood and was confident he could hold his own, maybe even come out on top. He had mastered the two-color hockey. He was already proficient with observation hockey thanks to Neru, and although his armament hockey was still developing, his physique made up for it in both quality and quantity. His swordsmanship had reached the swordsman level, and he had just learned shave for footwork. Thinking of this, Rhodes added silently, Lieutenant Commander Hina is a great person too. The only thing he was lacking was combat experience. Letting the hockey flow around him, slowly familiarizing himself with this new power, a sense of heroism swelled in Rhodes's chest. The solid foundation he'd built from years of training, combined with the SpecialAbilities ability, would allow him to reach the top of this world. And, Knights Don't Die Barehanded, ensured he could quickly master any combat skill. Especially with his new discovery, he could master an opponent's skills by acquiring their weapons. Next, he just needed to keep fighting strong opponents, push his body to its limits in battle, and then absorb and integrate the skills he'd mastered. Soon, he would stand at the peak of the ocean.